Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I am your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach. I am joined by my co host and producer, Holly Deschenes. So, Holly, you just got back from a big hot race down in Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, being in the Midwest, you never know what to expect weather-wise. So, any cool takeaways from that race?
Well, this was a first race for Rockford, so it was
Hmm.
their inaugural race, and I think it was a pretty decent venue. Yeah, can't account for the weather at all. So it
Hmm.
was it was really, really warm. Wetsuit optional for the swim, but yeah, super hot, super windy, which I guess you would expect in northern
Hmm.
Illinois, super windy kind of tracks.
Yeah.
But it was a good day. I am reminded when I'm at an event that I'm not actually racing that that's a different side of that, a different mindset. Sometimes it's actually more
Hmm.
stressful to be trying to keep up with a
Hmm.
bunch of different people and where are they and are they safe and do they need anything and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, Holly, she runs a team out of Madison, Wisconsin. So some good to see people work through the heat and make it to the finish line, right? On a tough
Yeah.
day, you lower expectations generally, but just battling through it is a win in itself, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool. Today we're going to get into the topic is permission to clarify. And a huge thing commonly in relationships is misunderstandings. So we're going to be talking about communication that leads to understanding. That may mean going the extra mile in trying to seek the clarity rather than being lost in confusion or creating a lot of assumptions. So we're going to go into the mechanics, like why it's so important to try and find that connection with another person and not leave all these gaps in communication going, because that's generally what causes a lot of conflicts is misunderstandings, misperceptions, things like that. So we're going to go into a little bit of why these things happen and some things we can do about it to be heard. I think that's really a big wound for a lot of people is feeling misunderstood and yeah, not always feeling heard and being able to make the points we want, get our point across to others so that they understand us on a deeper level. We're just looking to up level communication here. There's the past aspects that we bring into it. There's a reason why we might not be communicating to the best of our ability. And these are all skills for us to develop. If we've had a lot of miscommunications, damaged relationships because of misunderstandings. This could be a hot button for some people. So with anything, we're trying to go a little bit deeper to kind of understand where things got off track and how we can do better in the future. Um, anything you want to add real quick here before we get started, Holly?
When I read through kind of the idea for today, I was kind of excited to see like where you would go with this topic. I think that seeking the clarification, working through the reasons, not only why you should seek clarification, but also the reasons why you don't. I think that'll be huge to go through and
Mhm.
give some examples of that today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think kind of looking back, think of all the problems that get created that aren't really based on reality, right? It's just like
Yeah.
our mind filling in gaps. And so the first thing here is depending on the state of the conversation, if we're in a high stress situation or there are negative emotions involved, that's going to be coloring how we hear things, how we receive information. Generally, if I'm in this protective mode, it does snap me back into past stories, narratives that could have pain attached to them. I might not actually be able to hear the person in what they're trying to relay to me. The emotions are always a big factor here. If we're in this state of stress, if we're triggered, we're in this defense mode. So we're only going to be seeking to self preserve, or we're going to be validating what we feel already. That's why it's important, especially if we have a confrontation or conflict going on, this willingness to keep revisiting things to dissipate those emotions is really important because oftentimes you have to work in layers and levels to get to the truth. We all have our personal stories we're bringing to the table. We all have things that we're carrying into our communication and our expression. If we've been perceived as shy or introverted, communication may be difficult. And that those things generally come from the place of not being fully heard growing up. what's the point of me saying something? It doesn't really matter what I say. My words don't carry weight in these situations. In extreme versions, the be seen, not heard type parenting style can be really difficult where we feel like we have to be very targeted with our words. We have to choose wisely because most of the time they weren't well received. That's going to speak on this idea that we're talking about. If somebody's in a stressful state, if they're triggered already, very little of what we're saying is going to get through to them because they're wrapped up in their own world about something, right? The common thing up with parents in high stress environments, there's so much that gets lost in that. If that's what we were raised in, there's yeah, there is a shutdown that happens. There is a suppression. There is there can be this tendency to stop trying. We might just keep to ourselves more. What we're talking about here is this permission to evolve. What you needed to do in that environment might be holding you back right now. We need to be able to use our voice. We need to be able to communicate clearly. And that's an ongoing battle. This podcast is a great exercise in that of like each week, oh, how do I communicate more clearly these ideas? Because they're deep ideas, and it's very difficult to get those to resonate with a lot of people. So you've done a lot of work on yourself. It's generally some of these things can go over your head or can be difficult to connect to. And so that's always a challenge I'm trying to work through is how do I get this stuff grounded? The clarifying stuff is like, well, yeah, like especially in our kind of social media driven environment where everything's this 10-second clip or whatever, you can't add a lot of details to that stuff. That's the beauty of long form is we get to kind of stick with these things for an extended period of time to try and create that clarity when we're talking about these ideas. That's the thing. So when the stress response is kind of our catalyst for everything with this work is we all have a history, we all have things attached to these ideas. And that's all what's keeping us stuck or preventing these skills from fully developing within us is the suppression or the shutdown of our expression. We want to open it up and we want to take responsibility for our communication as well, where it's like, well, if I'm not being heard, okay, yeah, we work these puzzles a lot where, oh, I tried it this way, but maybe that wasn't received well by this type of person. And so maybe I need to adjust my communication style with this person to get the point across. It really is an art that takes continuous effort to try and sharpen things. And because some people are like, if we have direct communication, some people are threatened by that. Some people, it is because maybe they had a parent that was volatile or very kind of imposing on them, and that triggers those memories to them. We kind of need to know who we're working with. So we can be direct, but we can also infuse that with compassion and understanding to try and stick with somebody if they are getting activated by different things. We all have these challenging people in our life where it's just like, yeah, I don't feel like they're hearing me. I don't feel like they understand me. How do I get through to them? Those are good case studies to uplevel our communication because when the door is shut, it forces you to be resourceful and try and find another way, especially family members generally. Those can be frustrating relationships, but those are also high growth relationships, meaning, so anytime I have a long personal history with somebody and there's bound to be conflicts, there's bound to be misunderstandings, and there's different philosophies here. It's just like, oh, I'm going to like cut this person out or whatever because this conflict's gotten too big. But with this, we're always seeing those as opportunities where it's not working as is. So when we do internal work, we can shift how we show up. We can shift how we communicate. We can shift how we approach the situation to create a more relaxed environment so that more of what we're trying to say can get through. But there's also the cases of people that maybe, yeah, we're not on the same wavelength. Maybe we are having a very difficult time relating to them. And I may have to shift my communication at a level that person can understand. There's layers and levels to all this stuff where it's like I might have to, I'm not, there's judgment around it. Dumb it down is not a good way to phrase it, but it's like
Yeah.
bring it to, just kind of common things that everybody understands. That's where like analogies and things like that come in useful. When we're feeling misunderstood, it is just this challenge to if I really do need to make a point, it's that challenge to kind of stick with things and work through it and approach it different ways until we start to bridge that gap. The important thing to note here is when there is a misunderstanding, is in general, there is going to be a gap. I'm over here and you're over here, and there's this gap in the middle. And what our mind does is it projects things into the gap. That's what assumptions are, is I make assumptions based on my personal experience, like what that person's thinking or why they don't understand me or what's wrong with them, or yeah, I might be blaming them for something. There's anytime we have this gap, or whatever your individual story is, that's what's projected into the gap. And that's where we can start to build a lot of negative energy. We could have these very painful stories from our wounds that we're putting into that gap, and then we're projecting onto the other person. That's the thing, is anytime it's happening, that's always a cue for us to go a little bit deeper, go inward, as we always talk about here is, well, this person's really frustrating me. What about this situation is frustrating me? Who does this person remind me of? Because oftentimes our mind's always linking similar personalities together. This comes up a lot in our work. Oh, this person, this is like a struggle I'm going through. And then well, does that remind you of your mom or dad or stepdad or whatever? Right. So it's
Right.
like, it's because our mind is like linking whatever behaviors this person's exhibiting to what we know, which is going to be our personal history. And our foundation is always going to be caregivers. That's where a lot of things always go back to that. It is just this like, oh, when I was growing up and I wanted to do this always got shut down. Maybe that became a pattern where I felt like it didn't matter what I said. I couldn't take action on the things I wanted to, or I wasn't allowed to, or whatever it is. And so that puts us back into basically this being a little kid again. It puts us back in that mindset of, oh, what's the point? And then we like give up on the other person. And so these things are always these invitations to take a look at the story we're telling ourselves about the miscommunication or misunderstanding. There's always some opportunities for growth in there. This assumption is something like, if I'm building a story out of my own thoughts that didn't come from this other person, I might be drawing a lot of false conclusions there. That's why we generally do want to we want to assume positive intention from other people, unless they've like shown us they're a terrible person over and over again. We assume that most people are doing the best they can with what they know. That's kind of a good starting point, is how can I take responsibility for this? How can I shift myself internally to try and take this a little bit further if I'm not getting anywhere with it? So anything come up for you so far as we're going through this?
Well, I think there's a number of examples of this, and I'd be shocked if anyone listening can't think of one just in their own life. But just that there's so many stories, to your point, that we throw into these gaps, and it's about the other people, and then we attach our worth to it. I mean, we talked about one earlier this week where personally I was putting a rejection story into a situation with some people, and that really probably isn't it. That's my story. That's not what's actually necessarily happening in the situation. As you're going through it, there's examples we could certainly talk through if you wanted to, but that's more of like what I was just thinking of, is like, oh yeah, been there, yep, did that, yes.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that's that personal narrative of, if this person isn't receiving what I'm offering, that I automatically feel rejected. It starts playing on our self-worth, and then we start playing all the tapes of kind of things that have happened to us in the past and how this keeps happening to us. What we want to do is shift out of those stories, right? Because if we want a different result, we can't really be telling ourselves the same thing.
Right.
Because if we just stop at the negative emotion, and we just believe it and buy into it, well, that's going to continue to be our story. We're always looking to go deeper and question that stuff because it's not accurate. There's certainly times it has been. Like I said, if things were very suppressed and shut down, like it certainly was a reality at one point, but we have this power to change things, and we do that by how we show up and in the story we're telling ourselves. And it is just kind of connecting to, well, if I just stay there, the story gets perpetuated, and now that's closing my world off more and more. A lot of these things, it is about surrendering your ego. And we commonly think like ego is this we associate it with like arrogance or something like that. Oh, I think I'm the best or whatever, or I'm always right. Well, the ego is just it's self-preservation. So it's your self-identity. So if I actually believe negative things about myself too, that's also ego. It's not simply the arrogance piece. It's a mixture of everything of, well, who do I believe I am? And how am I, what image am I trying to portray out there? And how am I reinforcing that? And so my thing is like, if it's not working, we probably want to question and dismantle it. The ego thing is what, pride and ego is this desire to be right. But then that could also mean I need to be right about proving my low self-worth or my rejection as well. So it's just a self-validating system. And if it's not serving us, which that wouldn't serve us to be in the negative about ourselves, we just want to stabilize these things. But you don't need to like think you're the greatest thing ever, but it's more of just like, well, like let's put things into perspective. Does this story serve me? And is there something better that would suit me in this situation? We're looking for a path forward. That's what we're always doing here is like, well, the things I'm doing aren't working. So I need to challenge that narrative and I need to find some wiggle room to find a new path to try and create better results here. We have this fear of confrontation coming into if we had dominant personalities around us. Odds are, it's like we told ourselves, I don't want to be like that when I grow up. I don't want to
Right.
like yell at people. I don't want to be confrontational. I don't want to try and dominate other people. It's more of like, well, so that's all bad in our mind. The thing is, there is a need for confrontation in certain instances. That's kind of just planting your feet and standing in your worth and value. And it's being like, hey, like, let's come to an understanding here. Cause yeah, it might be me being mistreated or something like that. There are things we need to stand our ground about. And that's when we're not moving backwards anymore and we're standing, planting our feet. Now we have this base to work off of where we can start to stick with these problems. So confrontations generally create big emotions, but those big emotions, that is the catalyst for change. That's how we shift things is when we make a stand. So we don't necessarily want to we don't want to be confrontational all the time. We don't want to be a bully, but well, there are some things that maybe I'm sacrificing parts of myself and shutting down myself in order to keep the peace. And that's where we get into that people pleasing of like, okay, I'll just let the other person be right all the time. And right is relative to there's a winner and a loser, not truth. So those are two different things. The right is like proving the ego, the dominant ego is the one that wins, whether they're right or wrong. Truth is we take all the emotion out of it and we just get to the core of the matter. That's more just like, okay, this is something we can both agree on. And that to get to truth, oftentimes we have to strip out the ego. We have to surrender the right and wrong and just kind of get to the core of it. That can be a bit of a process. That all takes surrendering this idea of needing to be right. And the emotional reactivity, none of us really like that. We don't like to feel uncomfortable, especially for extended periods of time. But our cue here is like if I'm feeling uncomfortable, like that is always a growth opportunity in some way. There's something that's calling my attention that's going on internally, and I'm being presented an opportunity to show up differently. And so if I can sit with the discomfort and move through it and come to new solutions, up level my communication, stand my ground, stand up for myself, that starts to reestablish this trust with ourselves. And that's an important thing we always talk about on this journey is we really do need to trust ourselves. We need to trust that we're not going to betray ourselves. We need to trust that we're not going to self-sacrifice and do things that are out of alignment with our values and integrity and things like that. There are many things here that I do need to be able to communicate with strength, especially if it comes at that high cost of like, I feel like I'm really giving up an important part of myself just to keep this person happy. These dynamics are super important. And, we have to understand everybody's got their own individual world going on internally. They have this personal history. A conflict is generally an opportunity for both people to grow. If we can kind of see it as this dance, this co-creation of, well, I have parts in this, this other person has parts in this. We can only control our part of it. So that's where we always have some work to do. Of like, if this is really bothering me, I want to get to a place of peace about that. And I can't control whether the other person's willing to see my point of view or anything like that. I at least want to use it as my own personal growth opportunity. And what's cool is a lot of times as we dissipate the tension and release the old stories, now we're creating the space for this new understanding to happen. And so as I start to show up differently, the other person is experiencing me differently as well. When that happens, the tension's not the same, something shifts. Now we start to create space for a new understanding to happen because I'm not just acting in the same role anymore. I'm shifting my role. And because I'm shifting my role, they're going to respond to me differently because of that. So we're going to be shifting expectations when we redesign ourselves internally. This is all just a lot of that. Okay, what's my perception of the situation? If it feels really bad, if it is very self limiting, there's probably something I need to look at there. I'm probably hung up in the past. I'm probably wounded by something. If I heal that, part of me healing it is like me taking a new action too to reinforce the healing. That means shifting my relationship with the past, but then also shifting my self-image to be in alignment with this new version, which is going to be a stronger version of me. When we have power dynamics going on, like, yeah, let's say it's just somebody's trying to dominate. If I show up stronger, like they're going to sense that on some level. So much of communication is nonverbal. We're picking up energy from people all the time. It's this dynamic shift that now they're going to show me a different hand because I showed up stronger. These things are always opportunities for us to grow into them. And it's not, it is setting aside the self-validating ego piece, good or bad or inflated or deflated. And it's getting to the center of like, well, this is what's right for me. This is a core value. This is something I can't move on. And when we show up with that strength, that energy, generally now we're operating in the place where this person either has to meet us there or they might avoid it and they might leave. If that's the case, well, like what did I really lose there? So these miscommunications, it's like both people have a gap and we want to meet our gap because that's what we're responsible for. Maybe that as we work on our end, that other person starts to move towards us as well. That's generally how these things play out. If we have willing participants, if we have people that value the relationship, the extreme version would be like a narcissist that's just like really hung up on themselves and they can't ever be wrong or whatever, right? But those like, as we get stronger in ourselves, we're probably not going to want too many of those relationships around us anymore because we're not going to resonate with that. That is that relational shift that leads to new results is just simply me not playing the game anymore. Me starting to clear up the things within me that create the different power dynamics of maybe me always having to sacrifice or betray myself or give up things.
So some of what you were just talking through made me think about some terminology some people might be familiar with around confirmation bias. Because some of what you're talking about around the ego side and the sort of self-validating, I think is how you said it, lines up pretty well with the idea of confirmation bias. So just trying again to tie it to something that people might be familiar with in terms of terminology of how that could work. I don't know if there's more you'd want to say about that.
Confirmation bias is it's really just kind of what we expect is what our mind is trained to zero in on. A lot of times it doesn't really matter what somebody else is doing. If we're in our ego, it's like I'm just zeroing in on the one thing I expect to happen over and over again because it's a pattern within me. That's why our lives get small. That's why we get kind of caught in this idea of like being right about things, even if it's really damaging, is we just continue to zone into the same idea over and over again because we start to see it in everything. So whatever I expect from this person, that's unless I'm doing this work, like that's exactly what I'm going to get because that's what I've trained myself to dial into. We're always trying to peel back the layers, being like, well, yeah, this is what's showing up in your reality right now because you've built your whole system to confirm that. With this, we're kind of shifting to this. I don't know. Maybe if I'm different, the other person will be different. We're starting to create the space for different things to pop in because once I loosen my grip on that idea, now it's like my mind, and I'm no longer like operating under fear or some negative story or wound, my mind opens up and expands and it starts to see other things in the situation besides the one thing I'm trying to confirm.
Yeah.
And so that's
Right.
that's the importance of healing we're healing the mind. We're healing. Okay, so our mind is trained to hyper focus on the thing that is a threat to our survival. So whatever is the most painful thing to us, it's gonna pinpoint that time and time again because there's fear attached to that. Once we get to the what's underlying all that, the fear underneath it, and we reconcile it, meaning I understand it and I understand how to prevent that and I let go of all the hurt attached to it. Now my mind it kind of dissolves that it dissolves that attention that I devote to that thing. Now I'm starting to open up my mind to see other things in my experience, which is going to be yeah, like it's maybe this person didn't mean that, but like my past tells me that when people show up this way, this is what it means. So I'm not really giving that person a fair shake because I've already decided a lot of things before the conversation even happened. That is this questioning ourselves and asking, like, yeah, is this true? Is this what really happened? Or is that what just my emotions got activated and I just told myself the same story? We are in a lot of trouble with social media because your algorithm is wired on basically all the things you believe already. So like day after day, like you're just reinforcing the same things over and over again because based on what interests you or what you're drawn to, which is going to be like, oh yeah, this is what says what I believe. This means I'm right. But we're all flooded with that of like things that continually reinforce what we already believe. So that really strengthens those muscles. That's why we have all these polarizing things nowadays, because everybody thinks they're so right because they're just being fed that they're right all day long. And that's dangerous because that you can look at the statistics, but yeah, I mean, people are like more lonely than ever and like all these things. It's just, there's all these things that it's just like, it's creating a smaller and smaller world because everybody's strengthening their ego time and time again about I'm right about all these things. This is the only way to live or whatever it is. And so, we're getting a disconnect from other people in reality. We do need to step out of that and we need to let's say like a relationship we really value, we're more likely to stick with it to try and create the clarity that we're talking about here. Because I want this person in my life. I'm not going to let this misunderstanding like ruin things. And so I'm going to work at that. Okay. But oftentimes we have less and less of those nowadays, right? Friend groups are shrinking. Even in the dating world, it's like everything's these like snap judgments of like, oh, this person's like this, so they're gone now. So we're missing the opportunities like left and right of just, yeah, if I want to build any sort of relationship with somebody, there's going to be things we disagree on, and I'm going to have to stick with that and work through that to create the understandings. Because you don't have to agree with somebody, but if you understand somebody, now you're no longer wrapped up in the fear of creating all these assumptions. So yeah, that's an important idea. Is I want to wrestle with things so I can understand them. We've lost the curiosity and we're just looking for continuous validation of what we already think. The curiosity, that's what connects us is we really start to dig a little bit deeper with you. We stick with it longer. We ask different questions. Yeah, like rather, oh, like what's your job or what's your hobby or whatever. We start to find out like, oh, why does this person think the way they think? What's their wiring? As you get to see the deeper layers of somebody, now you can understand why they think the way they think or why they communicate the way they communicate. That's how we build a real connection with somebody is we stick with it. We stick with it through the misunderstandings. We stick with it through the misperceptions because I might be placing judgment on somebody else based on what I believe. I might automatically associate bad things with whatever they're modeling for me. In politics is a big one, where we just put everybody in these boxes and then throw everybody away if they're not aligned with us, right? So it's just these it's so much deeper. We can't just have these like very surface level things because that's what makes everybody feel so lonely. That's what makes everybody feel so misunderstood because we're all complex. We all have all these different facets of ourselves, and it's not just snap judgment after snap judgment. It's like there's a deeper picture to all this stuff, We really gotta, it is for our own good to really work through these things and try and find these deeper connections. Because if every time I have a misunderstanding, I'm done with this person, we don't have this path forward. We don't have this, because it doesn't end there though. If I cut the person out, now I'm still playing out all these stories about how they're wrong and I'm right. It keeps the stress pattern going. We don't just let it go. It sticks with us. And then what happens is the next time we encounter something similar, we've already strengthened our validation about it. So now our tolerance is zero.
Yeah.
So all these things they're a trap. It's designed to disconnect people. It's designed to get you dependent on just kind of this tribal mentality. And then the truth is, on some level, we all do need each other. But is this ability to relate and forge connections like across many different areas where we can't be operating in all these little islands because that's what ultimately makes us miserable. If I'm in my own little island and I'm operating this way of like I need to be right about everything, well, it's like anybody that gets close to me, I'm automatically like not actually allowing them in because I've already confirmed all these things about everybody. And that's where somebody's super judgmental. It's actually a very, what they want most is the to connect with other people, but they've been hurt so much that they don't allow anybody in. So it's kind of this self-perpetuating mechanism where you make yourself more miserable because you keep confirming the same things over and over again.
Yeah. I was listening to somebody else who was speaking on similar ideas, and we talked about it a little bit last week too, when we talked about being interdependent, but he was referring to everything is gray,
Mhm.
or he brought up politics a little bit as well, but he talked about, he's like, everything is purple, and he's like, I'm going to operate my businesses, my relationships on the premise that everything is gray and everything is purple.
Mhm. Honestly, it's like lazy. It's like if I just have to make a snap judgment and then I'm right, like it's I'm not taking it any further. There's all this stuff underneath that's probably painful that I've like linked with that. And so much isn't that simple. It's simple in terms of we want to get back to the basics of humanity and just understanding that we're all different on some level, but we're all the same on a lot of levels. That's the simple part. But all these the mind games are very complex, and the mind games are what divide and separate people. But it's finding nuance. It's like, and a lot of times the things we make snap judgments about, we have pain or we have insecurities there. We do have tribal mentality of like, oh, this like validates. I have to believe these things to be included in this group. So that's safer. So that's what it's easy to just do that because we can kind of just put a lot to bed, right? We just like, I don't have to actually go deeper and really understand myself at a deeper level to align with something that's true for me. I'm just kind of staying at that surface level. But when we're at the surface level, you're living your life. You can't help but interact with other people and you're going to get triggered constantly if we're not taking a deeper look and really getting solid at developing your own personal opinion. Because when we have these big emotions, there's people that need to dominate. There's people that just try to hide and they just like blend in with everybody too. Right. So there's no like individuality there either, where we're not connected to ourselves. We're just hiding amongst a bunch of other people. We're kind of blowing in the wind there. So we don't have this sense of self. And so we don't really go deeper to figure out what we actually want either. Because I'm kind of just, well, they call it enmeshment. So that's where you just kind of blend in with like big emotions. And it's a common one with your caregivers of like, well, yeah, it's just easier to kind of be a people pleaser and make like their needs my needs and that kind of thing. That's where it all comes from. We want to create that separation to get clear on who we are. And when we do that, that's where we can get into the gray areas. That's where we can get into nuance is starting to just really get connected with ourselves and then what makes the most sense for me, what makes the most sense for my life. And that's going to be a curated point of view. It's going to be something like, okay, I'm asking deeper questions and that's leading me down a path to getting more and more connected to what really matters to me. And then we can kind of zone out a lot of the mass consciousness stuff of just like, oh, everybody's supposed to think this way and everybody's supposed to do these things, because that's where you get caught up, is if you're not doing the deeper thinking, because it's, oh, well, like this is what I'm supposed to do, but it doesn't feel right to me, but I'm just going to do it anyway because it's easier. this is hard work. It's conscious work. That means like I have to like consciously question the things in my life. I have to consciously question society. There's no one size fits all approach. And the key to your happiness is always going to be in like creating these, it's creating clarity within yourself. So if I'm looking for clarification, I want to clarify myself first, and then I want to start to align my life with that to be in support of it. And so those the misunderstandings are just kind of default. It's just like I have these surface level understandings of all these things. I haven't really gone deeper with it. In that place, there's tons of gaps. Like, regardless, I might be all over the board because I haven't gotten anchored within to really understand who I am and what I want and act from that place. It can lead to a lot of this kind of blowing in the wind and just kind of adopting a mindset that's popular or that we're expected to have. There is going to be an emptiness inside because you're abandoning yourself in that process. When we're talking about clarifying ourself in communication, a big piece of that is actually clarifying ourselves within and really getting an understanding of what we feel. And that takes separating from the crowd. That takes going a little bit deeper and sitting with yourself and kind of asking the bigger questions. Because once we come to that place, now that's where we can have that confrontational energy if needed, because it's just like, okay, this is like something I really believe in, so I can stand on it. I've like solidified it within myself. So this is where I stand my ground because I'm not willing to sacrifice anymore because I've done the work to get really clear on what that is. And so we're always trying to deepen our roots within ourselves because that's what creates the strength and that's what allows us to really use our voice powerfully and directly, is because it's got this, it's deep within us. It's coming from a deep well where this is like, I've really thought this through and this is really how I feel.
So I'm thinking about if someone needs to do the work to clarify internally, and that's part of where they're starting. They want to lead with more clarity. They want to be more clear in their own communication. You just mentioned we got to go within first. What are the things that you would talk somebody through in terms of doing that personal work first?
I think a lot of people are already kind of there where they're in their normal day to day and they're not feeling fulfilled by it. Maybe they're questioning, maybe a friend group or people they're around, they're just, this doesn't like feel right. I don't feel like I can be me here. Right. Like those are kind of important clues to be, well, that's pointing us to to find that clarity. It's pointing us to be, well, this is all just kind of default stuff. This is just I haven't really picked this. I've just kind of fell into it. It's going to be like a level of dissatisfaction. I would say, well, especially here in America, well, when people start to feel that way, then they just go get medication so that they don't feel it as much. And it's we need that signal. We need that feeling to build off of because it is this catalyst to be like, okay, well, like I need to question some things. I might need to branch out. I might need to take some deeper looks at things. Is my job what I want it to be? Are the people I'm around, do I resonate with them? Do we gel together, or do I just feel like I have to be somebody else when I'm with them? Or am I just kind of going along with things? And that's the thing, is that's the tiny self betrayals over and over again that stack up to bigger and bigger things that get louder internally. That starts to create an emptiness inside because we feel like we've abandoned ourselves. And so all we want to do is, step one is pay attention to how you feel. If you're not happy with yourself on a regular basis, that's going to be a clue. But then I would encourage you to spend some more time alone. That alone means like not with your phone in your hand. You know what I mean? I mean, so just distraction free, just kind of sit with it and see like what thoughts come up for you. Is it the thoughts that bubble up when we don't have the things to pacify us? Yeah, or yeah, do I feel like I need to like drink on a regular basis or all the things that what am I doing to escape myself? If I need those all the time to feel it, that's where we want to reset. And so that's where it is just as we always talk about, go have conversations with safe people. And that means, yeah, maybe there was somebody around that like removed themselves and then you start to see them grow, right? Maybe go talk to that person. Hey, what did you do? Like, what was your process like? Start to be familiar because we all have examples of it around us, of people that have kind of pulled away and then maybe got their shit together, or maybe went, started to get really focused on something important or whatever it is. But it's like, it's finding those examples to be like, well, okay, yeah, like what was going on with that person? Can I pick their mind about it? So that's what like makes it more real. And I think we all have examples of that. But the thing is, when people remove themselves from situations, a lot of time, the people that are left in the group, this could be work or otherwise, it's like, yeah, there could be shaming involved. There could be like, oh, they left, they didn't belong anyway. They could say bad things about them. So it's like we start to have fears about that, or like, what would people say about me if I took some space to myself, or if I started to distance myself? Because all these systems are kind of self-perpetuating, where it's like the shame is like what keeps you locked in because you don't want to go through that gauntlet. But it's like it's a necessary part of the journey. And so it's finding the things you can align with that feel truer to who you are than what you're living. An important question is always, what did I really enjoy in childhood? What did I want to be? We start to look for clues that carries more of like your true essence. Like before all the things happened and things got suppressed and shut down, what what excites you, what can connect you back to yourself. And then I would go spend some time with those things. Where it's just really getting to just kind of reacclimating to yourself. And it is setting the phone aside, even if it's for 10, 15 minutes. We need some time to just really explore what's going on internally. That can be some powerful stuff because, yeah, you might have some really intense negative thoughts coming up. That's where we might need to get some support as well. You might need some guidance to help support you through that phase, to continually reinforce you like branching out and connecting back with yourself and getting that clarity, because these things can be very difficult to do by yourself. So, we look for examples, we try to find some help. Change your algorithm. If you're on your phone, go find some things that are more motivating, more heart-centered, rather than if you're like struggling with dating or something, like don't just be zoned into all the things about like why guys suck or why girls suck or whatever. All the things that are like feeding the negativity. It's just like, let's just shift out of it. Let's start to align with things that are more productive, that are more expansive in our mindset, where it starts to feel like there's possibilities again. It starts to feel like, hey, maybe I can have things different. But it's all about what you feed your mind. And your mind has all this stuff stored in it to begin with based on everything you've lived. And if that's left you in a place where it's like empty and not feeling very good, we got some work to do. And so that means like actually starting to feel some of those things. Like, why do I feel this way? Journaling's helpful, being around positive people that are further along than you, that might have some insights into what you're going through. It's kind of the same recipe no matter what we're talking about. It's getting to know yourself, it's feeling your emotions, understanding your emotions. And, with things like therapy, people can get caught in the trap of intellectualizing a lot of what they feel. So they start attaching like labels to everything. And that can be limiting too, because basically you're trying to slap an identity on things and then validate why you have that identity. And if that's already not making you happy, that could actually make things worse because it could be boxing you in more. Okay. And so that's why we want to take a deeper look. We want to question things, but we want to ask the deeper questions like, yeah, why do I have anxiety in these social situations? Well, yeah, maybe it's like you don't trust the people you're around, right? Maybe, maybe they don't really see you. Maybe you don't feel like you're ever heard. All those things are important clues to look at. And we want to go deeper and try and transform it, not just accept it as is and just stick with it for the rest of your life. So it is just taking it a step further, and because nothing is permanent unless we like slap the label on it and then just keep believing it over and over again, because that starts to just really build that into our identity. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to shift your identity actually. That means like less labels, and it means more compassion, more like trying to understand yourself. That's how we start to gain that clarity, is like, it starts with understanding the patterns and what's happened to you. But then it's just like, okay, we want to take that further, being like, okay, what can I do to shift this? How can I heal this? And healing it means like I'm adjusting my perception around the pain so that it starts to soften and I start to let it go. Okay. Because if I'm just validating the pain over and over again, that cements it into me. And now I really don't think I can change that anymore. Okay. So we got to start to back off those ideas and approach these things like softly. It's a curiosity energy, not like I need to pinpoint this and I need to isolate it and now I need to stamp it with a name. That locks it in even more. So these are just kind of some general ideas of we need to soften it. And we do that by creating some space and then asking some deeper questions and trying to get back to who we were before things kind of went sideways on us.
All right. So just to sort of summarize what we've talked about today around clarifying through things, we did a little bit of a rabbit hole on confirmation bias. Just to sort of put a bow on the conversation today, what are the key takeaways you're hoping people would get out of our conversation?
Yeah, I think a misunderstanding can be really painful to not be seen and heard for who you are and understood. But a lot of times we place that on other people. And, I think the question is, well, do you believe those things about yourself? We talked about before. Are you rejecting yourself? Are you, what mode are you in? Because we can't always be placing that on other people. Because a lot of times, people are just our expectations are formed about what we believe about ourselves. And so they're just like reinforcing what we already believe. And these things are all we can shift out of all of them. We can change these things, but it takes that deeper look where if I feel misunderstood on a regular basis, if I'm not using my voice powerfully, if I don't feel like I have a real opinion that I've developed, that is just going to take some deeper work. We're going to have to get clear on who you are and what you want and what really matters to you. It is finding some sort of value system. It's finding something that anchors you because it's just like that's where all good things kind of sprout from. We start to clarify our relationships, we start to clarify our career, our value, all the things that we how we express ourselves. And it comes from that spending time with yourself and getting to know yourself at a deeper level. And yeah, of course, that can be scary if you're not familiar with that. And just be gentle with yourself and just start with 5-10 minutes a day. Just and we want to approach it with curiosity. It's like if things aren't working, it's going to be internal things that have to shift. And so there's plenty of resources, plenty of support out there, get good content to take in that will help guide you through that process. Similar to this, this isn't the only thing, obviously, but it is just this, if you're having a lot of misunderstandings, I think it would serve you to create understandings within yourself. And so that takes time getting to know yourself at a deeper level. And that's where we can start to speak more powerfully, more directly. We carry a different energy when we go into rooms and we talk to people and we interact with others. We start to raise our standards too of what I allow in my life, what I don't want in my life, the type of people, the type of relationships. We start kind of holding this energetic standard that's going to start to attract the things we want in our life and it's going to repel the things we don't want. And through each one of these misunderstandings, you get a deeper window into how do I need to clarify myself to create better results. It's always internal work. We can use our experiences with other people to learn from because it's going to be bringing up emotions within us as we go to interact with other people. And so that's your access point. That's the entryway is if we're just blaming everything on everybody else, we have nowhere to go with that. That's just going to get worse and worse over time. So it is redirecting back to what you feel in every situation and trying to find ways to shift it so you could feel a little bit better about it. And so that really is about the story you tell yourself about yourself. Okay. And so we want to build in the self-compassion or like, yeah, things have happened. We've all gotten lost. We've all had problems happen where we felt stuck. And that doesn't mean it's hopeless. It means like, well, if if I'm stuck, I need to try something different. I need to look at these things differently. It would always serve you to try and find some level of positive outlook on situations. And ultimately, like if you're misunderstood on a regular basis by the people you're around, maybe there's other people that would understand you much better, right? That's also a key of maybe you're just in the wrong place. Kind of check yourself, ask those deeper questions, do a little soul searching and figure out what you need to do to align with a greater understanding of yourself. And then your external will start to reflect that back to you. And you'll get the nudges on maybe you need to align with something different. So
Yeah. Awesome. All right. For anybody who's listened this far into the podcast, I'm about to ask Brandon like what he offers and places that you guys can find him so you can work with him at a deeper level. But I did want to share that today is episode 22 for the podcast. And I am scheming up this idea that we would do an Ask Me Anything with Brandon for episode 25. I am just putting out a call for anyone who's a podcast listener to drop us some questions. You can email the podcast@brandonthielk.com, and we'll make sure that's all in the show notes. If you do have questions that you want to ask, or of course you can hit up any of the social media channels as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave us a comment.
That'd be great if you guys could share some things. I would love to, speak to things that are very personal to our listeners. So yeah, would definitely love the input there. If you'd like to go deeper with me, have a conversation about how I can help, you can schedule a free 30-minute strategy session at brandonthielk.com. So it's a video call. We just kind of chat about what you got going on and where you want to head in your life and how I can help. I post daily at Brandon Thielk on Instagram. So, there's always new content up there, twice a day, actually. And I'll be putting out a masterclass here soon again. I'm just trying to get clarity on what that's going to look like, shifting things around in the business, but just always trying to find ways to serve and help at a greater level. So, if you guys have any input, definitely share that with me. I'd love to hear about it. But thanks for listening, and I hope you got a lot of value out of this one.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll talk to you later, Brandon.